Good morning. It's good to see everyone. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate the opportunity to teach this morning. We have, of course, Russ is out. Jill has been ill and continues to have some health issues, and I want to keep them in our prayers, certainly. And then I think Brad is out of town. Brad called me Thursday evening and asked me if I would stand in for him this morning, and I told him I would. So we're sort of down to the third string here. So hopefully I won't fumble too bad, and we'll hang in here with this. But I appreciate your presence this morning. Before we get started, are there those that we need to mention in our prayers? Any special prayer request? Yeah, Terry and Irene. Yeah, Terry and Irene. All right. Yeah. Terry's been through a tough time. Hopefully he's recovering, and then, Miss Irene, just like we're going to study about some this morning with people getting older, is getting older, but is so inspiring, such an inspiring person. So let's keep them in our prayers. Would you bow with me? Father, we're grateful for this another day that you've made, and we're grateful for this opportunity we have to study together. We're grateful for each one here, for the dedication that they show by being here and seeking to understand your ways and your word better. Father, we ask that you be with those that are not able to be here this morning through their health, those that we've mentioned, our brother Terry and sister Irene, and many more that are on our list of sick. And we ask, Father, if it be your will, that you restore them to their health and that you return them back to us. We're grateful for your word. We're grateful for the inspiration that it provides in our lives each day. And we ask you to help us take that word and take your example of your Son and to our communities each day in our workplaces and set a good example. We ask you to always help us to shine your light to those around us. We ask you to be with us now as we study. Help us have open minds and kind hearts, and forgive us when we fall short of the mark that you've set for us. In Jesus' name, amen. Vicki Shelton, yeah. Vicki, of course, having had surgery, and is there an update? I have not heard an update. Very good. Becky said that she's doing well, and hope to come home today. So that would be great news if she's able to come home. She's been through a lot. So continue to keep Vicki in your prayers. I want to welcome any visitors we have. It's good to have you here. Welcome you back any opportunity that you have. We're going through a book. We're on page 20. And before we get started with that, a couple things. First of all, I want to recognize all of our veterans. We live in a great country and a great place, and I want to say thank you to all of our veterans that are here, that in the congregation that serve. We're truly blessed to live in this country. We have our difficulties and our struggles, certainly, as we all see on the news every day, but we still live in I think the greatest country in the world. And I'm grateful to our military people that protect us, that we're able to go to bed at night and rest comfortably, and then we go to our jobs and the things that we do each day, and while they stand guard for our freedoms and our protection. Something that it's been 50 years since we had a draft, and that surprised me. That's a long time that people have volunteered in a volunteer army. And for people to volunteer to be away from their families and to for the sacrifices that they go through to protect us and give us the freedoms we have is truly amazing. So to all of our veterans, I'd like to say thank you.
I'd like to say something. I worked with 18 years with volunteer soldiers at Fort Gordon, and believe you me, they're gung-ho soldiers.
They're gung-ho soldiers, yeah.
Volunteers were absolutely, and
So-
volunteered with soldiers.
Something to be said about volunteering. People typically volunteer for things they want to do. You know, we don't very often volunteer for something we don't want to do. So the fact that people volunteer to be in the military and put their lives at risk, you know, whether it's on a ship or in a foreign country, or you know, even in some instances in these days in military bases in this country, we've had some attacks. So we appreciate their service. Something else that I want to talk about just a minute, I asked Pat if it was okay to do this, and I hope it's okay with you. I want to talk to you a minute as about a business item, and you know, I speak as the manager of the Power Board. I want to make y'all aware, I know there has been a lot of question and a lot of really sort of anxiety about the Huntsville stations. And so if you live in the city of Scottsboro and you have, you know, the Power Board's cable service, at this time the only channel that we have had to discontinue service is WHNT. So if you live in the county and you use, for instance, North Alabama Electric Co-op, the co-op, I think on January 1, will suspend their video service, period. So in other words, over the last year or so, the co-op has said, we will not provide video service any longer. Our customers, the co-op customers, need to move to another service. So what most of the people have done is they have moved over to YouTube TV or Hulu, which are streaming services, and they have received their Huntsville stations through that service, all right? The problem is that because of viewership, so in other words, Nielsen is a company that registers what people in every county of the United States are watching. And so we in Jackson County, including Scottsboro, over the last year watched more Chattanooga than we watched Huntsville. So in Scottsboro, it seems like there's sort of a point of demarcation, or about on the other side of Stevenson, that people on that side of Stevenson east watch Chattanooga, but people west watch Huntsville. Well, when Nielsen did their rating survey, when you have a smart TV or a set-top box, or you may even get a phone call from Nielsen saying, what are you watching? And if you say Channel 9 out of Chattanooga instead of Channel 5 or 31 out of Huntsville, then they log that. And so for 12 consecutive months, people watched Chattanooga more than they watched Huntsville. So when that happened, the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, placed Jackson County, the entire county, in what's called the Chattanooga DMA, or Designated Market Area, which means that all of the cable companies in Jackson County are required to take the Chattanooga stations. Okay? So something you may not know is that cable companies pay Chattanooga and Huntsville both a lot amount of money to carry those signals. They're not free. Even though you can put an antenna up and get them free, they're not free to the cable company. They have to pay them to carry them. I'll tell you, the Power Board last year paid Huntsville and Chattanooga $1.6 million to carry their signal. Okay? So what happened when this DMA switched is we and all of the cable companies in the county said, since the DMA switched and we're required to carry the Chattanoogas, the amount of money we pay Chattanooga should be higher than the amount of money we pay Huntsville. Previously, we paid Huntsville more and Chattanooga less. Okay? Because the DMA flipped, we asked the programmers, allow the amount of money that you're paid to flip. The only channel that's not agreed to do that is WHNT. So we then were faced with paying $7 or $8 for each of those channels in both markets. So let's say $15 for one channel. And so you're faced with, you want your rates to go up close to $10 or not carry the channel. I chose to instruct our board to not carry the channel. So apologize for the inconvenience of Channel 19 not being on. We will still, if they will come back with a fair rate, put it back on, but we don't think that will happen. So we'll see where it goes down the road. Now, with all of that said, there is an opportunity or a possibility that over the next 12 months, if people watch more Huntsville than they do Chattanooga, it'll go back to the Huntsville DMA. And if that happens, then we will have to renegotiate all those contracts with the Huntsville channels and pay them more than we do the Chattanooga channels. So this is very complex. I went to Washington twice this last year. I typically go twice a year, meet all of our senators and congressmen, and Angel got to go, I think, on at least one of those, and I was asked to do a little presentation on this issue because the only people that can change this is Congress. Yeah, that's the only entity that can change this. And Dale Strong's office wrote a letter last week to the FCC asking them to change it. And we'll see if it does or not. But I wanted to talk to you about this mainly because of weather. It really is a community service issue, and we are concerned about, viewers in Jackson County being able to keep up with dangerous weather coming in if you don't have the Huntsville stations. And it's my understanding that, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, YouTube and those channels are not carrying the Huntsville stations they own. We only lost one at the Power Board, but they're not carrying any. Okay. Any questions? I know that's a lot of information and any questions about that?
It's only 19, correct?
Only Channel 19 out of Huntsville is the only one that the Power Board has suspended. I don't know about the other providers other than the co-op and them moving people to YouTube TV, and all the Huntsville stations went away. So, Clay?
There seems to be a differentiation between sound of the stations.
Yeah,
You can go to one station and the next one will blow you out the door.
yeah.
How can you adjust that?
You really can't. So when we receive those channels, we just pass them through. It is just literally a pass through, so there's not much you can do about that. Yeah, it's just that way. The audio level, it'd be like walking into a room with two radios going and one higher volume than the other. It's not a lot you can do about it other than turn one down, and in this case, there's just not a way to do that. So, anything else? Doesn't make any sense at all? We've explained that about 2,000 times in the last week and a half. So.
When you say $15, you said 1.6 million you paid for the Huntsville stations last year, but then you switched over to $15, and that doesn't sound like a lot of money. Are you talking about $15 per?
So that's for two channels. So if
Per subscriber per month?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you take somewhere close to 5,000 customers and, let's say it's $5, then you're talking about $25,000, right? And so then you multiply that times 12 months, times 8 or 9 channels, you start talking about a lot of money. So it's just a business decision. Hope everyone understands, and hopefully, so if you remember, last year we turned Channel 31 off for the same reason. And the reason we did Channel 31 last year is they were what's called out of cycle. They were the only one channel that was up for renegotiation of contract last year. Everybody else, and they only did a one-year deal. Station manager called me Friday afternoon and said, we're good with the new rate of being out of DMA. But when we turned 31 off, they stayed off a month and a half, and they came back and said, okay, we'll pay you what the rate, less rate, and if you'll put us back on, and we put them back on. So we hope Channel 19 does the same, but we don't think that will happen. Massive company with billions of dollars, and just don't think it'll go that way. So I appreciate your patience with that. Anything else?
If you're on satellite, when those stations are cut off, it's still cut off on satellite. How come that happens?
Yeah, so it's the same thing. Satellite has to honor the DMA. So that's a Federal Communications rule that within the county that you live, there is a large market where the signals originate, Huntsville or Chattanooga being ours, and maybe Birmingham or Nashville. We're closer to Huntsville and Chattanooga. Then the FCC says this entire county goes into this designated market area, or DMA, and the whole county was moved into Chattanooga DMA. Therefore, even satellite providers are required to honor that DMA. Okay? All right, it's not just the cable companies, but even the satellite provider. Very unfortunate. We're trying to everything we can to get it changed back to Huntsville, mainly because of the weather. You know, I told Angela, I'll tell you, when I went and spoke in Washington, I told our congressmen and senators, and really the only one I gained a lot of traction with this was Congressman Adderholt. And Congressman Adderholt, this is not even his district. He gets into this area a little bit, but actually it's not Jackson County, just down around Gurley. But he understood this because he's from Haleyville, and this same thing happened in his hometown in Haleyville with Columbus, Mississippi. So they ruled that county was watching more of Columbus, Mississippi than they were Birmingham, and so they put them in the Columbus, Mississippi DMA. And so I asked Congressman Adderholt, I said, how many people in Chattanooga, Tennessee are voting for you? And he said, I get your point. And at the end of the day, you can't, the politicians can't get out their political message unless the local Huntsville stations are on here. And so that resonated a bit with them, but they all sort of threw their hands up and said, it's the FCC and it's their decision. So, but hopefully we'll make some headway with that. So thank you for your patience, and I appreciate your questions and listening to that explanation. So Brad told me we were down to, I think, question 3 or point 3. And I asked him if he stopped at this place and knew he was going to be gone, he thought I was qualified to teach this. It says we should listen to older people. And so I asked him if he was making a point about me being older. But, let's just read this for a minute, and I'll have a couple comments and thoughts. He says, they are ready to share with us their knowledge, their experience, their understanding, their love, and their care. That older people are to be highly esteemed is clearly taught in the Scriptures. Paul said in 1 Timothy chapter 5, verses 1 and 2, rebuke not an elder, but entreat him as a father, and the younger men as brethren, the elder women as mothers, the younger women as sisters, with all purity, according to Titus chapter 2, verses 1 through 5. Older men and women should be excellent teachers for young people. When Rehoboam rejected the advice of the older people, he made a big mistake, eventually causing Israel to rise up against him. And we may could turn over there and read that story here in a few minutes. When you think of older people, give me some words that you think when you think of older people. When you thought of your grandparents, when you think of your grandparents, give me some words that you think of. Love? Wisdom. What else? More patient than parents. So I'll say something about that. One of the things Angel and I, with the Lord's blessing, will be grandparents for the first time next April. And I think we're more nervous about being grandparents than we're about being a parent. And I think there may be something with that with wisdom. We weren't smart enough to worry about it maybe when Logan was born. But yeah. So, I hear all the time that people have said to me over and over, when you get to be grandparents, you're going to love it because you can take them and give them back. You wish you would have just not had your kids and you could have had the grandkids first. And I think probably a lot of instances the children said it would have been better if I'd have got the grandparents and not had to go through the parents to get the grandparents. So I think that can probably be turned around a bit. What else? What else can we think of about? Experienced. Yeah, very good. A couple of things that came to my mind. One that I see as I get older, and I recognize two words that may surprise you a little bit, and one is courage. One is courage. It's not easy getting old. It's Marie's giggling up here. I know it's hard. It's hard getting old. And one of the things that with that is we at work, there's a group of us that get to work every morning about 30 minutes early and solve world's problems. And we all of us are and I'll be 63 next month. And so we're all getting older, and as we stand up, it's this noise. We all make fun of each other with all these moans and groans, and as we go into our meeting rooms to get ready for the day's work. It takes a lot of courage. Angel will tell you I'm a very active person. And I used to jump out of the bed and just just run through the day, and now when I get on the floor, I hang on to things for a few minutes just to get everything settled down and not fall. And so it takes a little while, but it takes a lot of courage, Clay.
One thing about our people, parents now, a lot of them are having to take care of their parents and their children.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they call that the sandwich generation.
Yeah, it's, society goes through its ebbs and flows of time, and, we become so distant in some ways with work, the requirements we have in our workplace, but we also see families sort of multitasking and taking care of their own families at different levels, and so that's right. The second word that I thought of, and I see it, with some of my family members. I'm the youngest of 8 children, and so with me being 63, you can imagine how old the rest of them are. And only one of them, unfortunately, he passed away about 2 years ago, my oldest brother, Walt. But I have 3 siblings in really bad health. And one of the 2 of them, one of them in hospice care and another one just getting ready to start that. So one of the things with that I've seen in them is perseverance. It takes great courage to keep going every day as we get older. And then the perseverance of that and continuing on with that with a good attitude says a great deal for older people. And I think that's one of the things that we may not convey to the younger generation real well, but one of the things I encourage myself, and I told Angel not so long ago, in my private prayers, one of my prayers is to die with courage. And I think we see so many older people that are so courageous and persevere that it's very inspiring and encouraging to me. Someone I'd like for us to think about just a minute along these lines is Moses. Angel and I did a little bit of study this week, and I appreciate her help with this. We did some study on Moses. If you look at Moses, can you imagine the things that Moses saw? I mean, he grew up, we know the story. He's put in a basket, and then he's rescued by Pharaoh's daughter. He lives in Egypt for a long period of time. It looks like maybe about 40 years. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. He goes away, and then he returns back to Egypt and says, "Let my people go." He kills an Egyptian soldier there and has to leave, and then comes back and says to Pharaoh, "Let my people go." Think of the courage that took. It looks like, and somebody correct me, it looks like Moses was probably around 80 years old when that happened. Okay? That's pretty elderly. No offense, but that's a great undertaking at 80 years old to go back and say to Pharaoh with his army, "Let my people go." And then what did he do the next 40 years? He walked. Good answer. He walked in a wilderness with a group of people of how many people? 600,000 men we know of, right, that came out of Egypt. Probably somewhere better of over 2 to 3 million people at least that he led out of that land across the Red Sea into the wilderness, in Sinai for 40 years. Unbelievable. Think of the courage that took. And, not a happy people. Yeah, not a happy people. Anybody ever supervise a group of grumbly people? He'll do this to you. And I've got a great group of people at the Power Board. It is hard. At the end of the day, one of our goals as leaders in business is to motivate people, to give them a task and inspire them to do it. That's our goal as supervisors and managers. Could you have imagined trying to inspire and motivate millions of people in a desert without food that they felt like they needed and without all the things, water, the living conditions? It didn't take them long to start saying, "Just should have left us in Egypt. We could make bricks and get bread and water that way." But Moses did not relent. He had great courage and great perseverance. All right. Any thoughts on that?
Better be glad you got men, not women.
Do what now?
Better be glad you're supervising men and not women.
Well, I do that too.
Yeah, but women are worse.
I didn't say that. I consider it an honor to be able to manage both. I say manage. I tell Angel, she'll say to me, why don't you take a day off? And I'll say, because I've got 39 managers back there telling me, why were you not at work? And so one of the ways I look at it is that's sort of my philosophy in management is I'm one manager, but I have 39 others. There are 40 of us at the Power Board, and I consider them all my supervisors or my peers evaluating how I do my job every day.
I'm sorry for the more input, but we don't read it very often where Moses is not allowed into
Yeah.
Canaan, and we don't read very often about his death and how well he handled both of those situations. I was wondering if you would go read that.
Yeah, so if we go, you want to read it or you just want to talk about it?
Can we go read it?
You want to tell me where to go exactly? Numbers, I think it is.
I'm sorry, I thought in our study together you marked it down.
No.
I'll find it. I know it's Numbers 20 where
I think 29.
in, but I forget where his death is. It's someplace different, like Deuteronomy. Isn't it Deuteronomy that he's not allowed in?
So I'll tell the story. I'll tell the story and you find it and we'll read it. How about that? We'll see how accurate my story is.
I know it's Numbers 20 where he's not allowed in.
Yeah, so Moses, well,
He and Moses, so that's,
Aaron.
Aaron.
Aaron, yeah.
And that surprised me too. We don't talk much about Aaron wasn't allowed in either.
So they sent the spies in, and two spies came out, right, and said, we can take the land, let's go and inherit. But, you know, while they're going through that process, the people are thirsty, and God tells Moses to do what? What does he say to him to do to the rock? Speak to the rock, all right? So Moses was, if you go read this, Moses was not very pleased with the attitude of the people. And so I'll say that about being a manager or a supervisor, you know, you've got to rise above the muck. And Moses didn't do a very good job of rising above the muck and leading that way. He got down and lost his temper and got angry. And instead of speaking to the rock as God had told him to do, he hit the rock, right? Hit the rock twice, and water came forth, and the people received their water. And so they Angel,
Numbers 20, verse 10.
you want to read it for us?
Okay. So Moses took the rod from before the Lord, just as he had commanded him. And Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly before the rock. And he said to them, listen now, you rebels.
Yeah.
I don't ever remember being taught that Moses called them rebellious
Yeah.
or rebels. And then shall we bring forth water for you out of this rock? So he claims he and Aaron have the power to bring forth the water from the rock. That's the way I read it anyway.
Yeah, so they did not give God his due honor. They did not say, this is from God, and follow the instruction that they were given. They sort of just went on their own and did what they thought was best to, and it appears through frustration that Moses got, by him calling them rebels, it appears that he got frustrated with those people. And
Then conversely and contrarily, or which happens in the Cheney family a lot, they say don't do something and then they do it themselves. In verse 24, Aaron shall be gathered to his people, for he shall not enter the land which I have given to the sons of Israel, because you rebelled against my command. So they're guilty of doing what they said that the people were guilty
Yeah.
of.
bit hypocritical. Yeah, so if you look at Moses and you think about all he did, I mean, if you think about where all the things he saw and all the things he did for God and all the courage he had and the perseverance in the wilderness and all that, he didn't get down to the end and maintain the attitude, and we're going to get into this word heart here in a few minutes, or matters of the heart, or means of the heart. He did not maintain that proper attitude that he needed to have to lead them into the promised land, and God kept he and Aaron both out of the promised land.
And right after that, he was stripped of his garment, so he's stripped of his
Yeah.
honor.
Yeah.
So in verses 25 and 26, Aaron was carried up by the Lord and stripped of his honor for that rebellion. Do we think that's pretty harsh?
Well, I mean, it seems harsh, but I think that if you look at Moses, we don't get any indication, if I remember correctly, that Moses took that too harshly. He sort of took it the way Moses typically had taken things, as I've done wrong, and I'll take my consequences for doing wrong.
Deuteronomy chapter 8. Again, Deuteronomy chapter 8. And it's pretty much the whole chapter where Moses dies. Maybe you want to ask someone else to read. I would say 15 through 20 would be interesting.
What chapter?
Deuteronomy chapter 8. The whole chapter is pertinent, but I would say 15 through 20 is where Moses dies.
Chapter 8, verses 15 through 20. Let me back up here to the start of a sentence at least. So, about 11. So he says, "Beware that you do not forget the Lord your God by not keeping his commandments, his judgments, and his statutes which I commanded you today. Lest when you have eaten and are full and have built beautiful houses and dwell in them, and when your herds and your flocks multiply, and your silver and your gold are multiplied, and all that you have is multiplied, when your heart is lifted up, and you forget the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage, who led you through that great and terrible wilderness, in which were fiery serpents and scorpions, thirsty land where there was no water, who brought you water, for you were in the out of the flinty rock, who fed you in the wilderness with manna, which your fathers did not know, that he might humble you and that he might test you, to do you good in the end. Then you say in your heart, my power and the might of my hand have gained me this wealth." So, Moses, 400 years in Egyptian bondage, and it's a beautiful story, an amazing story, and just amazing that a group of people that big for that many years, and then it didn't take them real long to grumble. So as we circle back, Benjamin Franklin is quoted as saying, "Those who love deeply never grow old. They may die of old age, but they die young." So, I think a very wise thing said there. All right, anything? It's okay. Good work. All right, very good. Anything else on being older? I'll say to us that are older, thank you for your courage and your perseverance. Yeah.
It's not about being old, but that passage you just read will tell you where America is today. That we are the most blessed people on the earth, affluent, everything that you can think of. But we have the same attitude that the people that God had protected for 40 years, fed them, clothed them, did everything, but we don't appreciate it. So, we're like a bunch of sheep that listen to a very small number of people, whether it be TikTok, all the social media, and that's where people are getting their information. They're so ignorant. So, every day I pray
And how many people does it take to change the world? If everybody in the world got up today and looked in the mirror and said, I will do what's right today, what did Joshua say? As for me and my house, we will serve Jehovah. No differentiation. That's all it takes. This is not complex. Every morning, if we all got up and said, I will do what's right today, our problems are solved. Now, the struggle with that is there may be some difference in understanding of right and wrong. I think we all in this country have a very clear understanding of that. Clay? I'm sorry, did you have a... No. He was pointing at that it said call on you. I'm sorry.
If we go back to the story of Moses, he had to suffer the natural consequences for his behavior. He got the discipline. Like any good father disciplines his children, God disciplined him for the rest to see. But he still got to go to heaven. If we go back and look in I think it's Hebrews, we'll talk about the men of
Faithful.
faith. He's chosen. God never quit loving him. But
No.
And Moses knew, okay, I messed up, I need to suffer my consequences. And I think that's something the elderly show us as well, is that we need to make good choices. When we make poor choices, we suffer the consequences of those poor choices. And like he was saying, right now our nation is making a lot of poor choices.
Yeah.
But it's like you said, if we would turn around, God would forgive us and bless us again.
Yeah, and Angel was a much better disciplinarian with Logan than I was. You know, Angel was that was one of the things when Logan was born, Angel was just flabbergasted. She's like, I know you in business and I know how you do things, and I thought you'd be this just real disciplinarian, and instead you just grab her and hug her and it'll be all right, and I have to be the bad guy, and thank you for being the bad guy. But you know, we are... You know, I think God is no doubt different than we are as parents, and that is, and then I'll say this about being a supervisor, we discipline for love. I tell people, I discipline you to keep you employed, not get rid of you. And I think we do that with our children. We discipline them to help them through a situation, not take something away from them or make it worse on them. And I know that's why the old saying is harder on me than it is you. And but Clay?
There was one woman that changed the whole drinking driving program in this country.
Yeah.
She spent most of her time in Washington, nearly lost her family because she spent so much time in Washington. But she changed the laws about drinking and driving
Yeah.
so much that now our soldiers will lose their jobs if they're driving DUI.
Yeah.
One DUI, they're gone.
Yeah.
And all the people, DUI are number one on killing people on the highway,
Yeah.
still.
Yeah, still. And what a tragedy. You know, we go back, some things are tragic that affect families forever. You know, we talked about veterans early. I had an uncle that my brother that lives here in Scottsboro, Merrill is named after, that was killed in the Battle of Saipan in World War II. And, you know, my mom retold the story over and over about she was at my grandparents' home when the officers came to inform my grandmother that her son had been killed. And it affected them forever. And, drunk driving is the same way. Military people and the things that they suffer. I had 4 uncles that served in World War II, and, one with Patton, one at Guadalcanal. I mean, it just horrid stories. And we get to live the DL in the freedoms of all of that. And unfortunately, at this time, and I'm a very optimistic person, I think I have some confidence it will change. I think that we are beginning to see some change in a generation of younger people that will change it, and I'll always be optimistic at that.
It's chapter 34 and
Yeah.
Deuteronomy. Even God explains to him, even though you do this, I'm going to let you see the land. And Moses' eyes are still very strong, and he gets to see Canaan before he dies.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a very good point. Even though he doesn't get to go into the land, God does let him see the land. So I had some more prepared for Hart. I'll encourage you to study ahead. all along, with DL's comment and our comments about where we are in this country, if we would get people to understand that it doesn't require a law to do good, that it's a matter of the heart, it's a lot easier. God knew it from the time that Adam and Eve sinned, and He said, I'm going to change this process because their minds are continually on evil. I'm going to change their heart. And, if you go over into Hebrews chapter 8, which is, y'all that have been in classes that I've taught before, I've probably quoted this passage 100 times, and that is, I will establish a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Jacob, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. I will write my laws on their hearts, and their sins I will remember no more. Great blessing from God, but it has to change in the heart. So, Clay, Jeff?
Texting is one catching up with drunk driving.
Yeah. Yeah, so texting, a normal text, I don't know, we do driver safety. So how far do you think you drive in distance while you're texting on a normal text? How distant? 2 miles. No, that's a little farther. 2 football fields. 200 yards. So think of a player running 100 yards. If you're an Auburn fan like me, that hadn't happened a lot this year. They don't go that far, but 2 football fields typically that you take your eyes off the road to text. So that's a long way. So, thank y'all for your comments. I appreciate it as always, and it's been an honor. Thank you.